Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we're joined by Alec Hill, a leader well known around the world for his deep commitment to servant leadership. Alec spent 14 years as the president of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, leading thousands of people across 150 countries. His career has spanned law, refugee work, academia, and publishing, all woven together by a desire to lead with integrity and purpose. In this episode, Alec shares how a cancer diagnosis changed his perspective on life and how he's found purpose in bonus time. Whether you're facing your own crisis or just want to lead with greater purpose, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. Alec, thank you for joining us on the Servant Leadership Podcast.
Great to be with you.
When I first heard your story, it had such an impact on me, and we'll get into why that was, but I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit of your career path and what your career looked like, because it was all over the place.
Yeah, I'm a linear person, but it was not a linear life. I was a lawyer, and then I decided I didn't like that, so I got out and went into refugee resettlement with World Relief at age 27. Then became a professor. I taught business law, and then became dean of a business school, which is totally fraudulent because I'd never taken a management or finance course in my life. And then became president of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship USA for 14 years. So that's kind of the career path. I will say at 62, I got bone marrow cancer. I know we're going to talk about that. And then for the last 10 years, it's hard to believe, I have been coaching, mentoring, and teaching.
Wow. And your career path obviously is just so interesting, from law to education to business to ministry to writing to all kinds of stuff. One of the things that I thought was interesting is somewhere along the line, you've written a couple books, but one of them was just business. And it kind of gets into how to navigate ethical challenges in the marketplace. And why did you decide to write that book based on some of your experiences? And what was it about?
Yeah, I was teaching, we had an MBA program at Boeing, and I was supposed to bring Christian ethics into these non-Christian, basically engineers. And I had to do it, and I couldn't find anything. A lot of the material I found was Sunday schoolish or amateurish. This is back in the 90s, so there really wasn't much on the market. So I wrote it out of necessity. And the fun thing was I tested each chapter out on my classes. So they would take out sort of the gospel speak if it was too Christianese, and they would kind of polish the stone, and it got down to, so now it's in its third. I'm actually writing the fourth edition. It continues to sell and be used a number of campuses. So that has been a surprise in my life that has gone so well.
So along the way, you wrote a second book, and this is really the book that I like both, but I really enjoyed the second one. Talking about living in bonus time. Talk about how this even came to be and what the journey was like to write your second book.
So in April of 2015, I fainted, and I blew it off, and I didn't tell my wife. And a friend who was at me at breakfast, he said, if you don't tell her, I will. So I went home, and that led to a series of tests. And it turned out to be myelodysplasia syndrome, which is a form of bone marrow cancer. So it was devastating news, and I was failing fast. I had a second test done in Seattle. We were living in Wisconsin at the time, and it looked really bleak. It felt like a death sentence. So they put me in a high-risk category in high-risk cancer. So the only possible solution was a bone marrow transplant. I have two older brothers. The middle one was a perfect match on all four counts. Obviously, it went well. I'm here. I'm an outlier through no merit. I remember asking the doctor, I said, well, did I survive because I'm fit and because I'm this? And they said, no, it's because your brother was a perfect match, stupid. Shut up and don't take credit for it. In a divine sense, so the title of the book is Living in Bonus Time, which is basically borrowing a soccer metaphor of stoppage time. And you play in the 90 minutes in soccer or football, as they say globally, and then you stop, and then you play this extra period of time. You know when it starts, you don't know when it ends. So my life is like that. Regulation time ended in 2015, and bonus time started then. And, I'm not going to live as long as I probably would because the treatments are pretty harsh. So I'm 72. I have a body probably of a 5 to 10 years older than that person is what they've told me. I've had 2 new hips and a new knee. And there's just all this kind of stuff. But I'm here enjoying grandchildren and life, and very thankful.
Wow. such an intense period of time for you, and probably a lot of, I'm guessing, fear and doubts. And the book really talks about how you navigated that to find completely new purpose. When you deal with people all the time who have read the book or who, at different speaking events that you do around the world, and you talk about this journey, how do you encourage people when they're at rock bottom or just in a pit with no end in sight?
Two ways. The first is there's a science called post-traumatic growth, which I had never heard of, which says that those of us who go through trauma, whether it's bankruptcy or divorce or death of a child or cancer or an accident, whatever it is, two-thirds of us actually say 3 years later that we are better people for it. We're stronger for it. We're more resilient. We're bolder. So, you always hear about PTSD, which is the downside. You never hear about this growth. And so that was a real shock to me when I was researching for the book. I thought, I'm experiencing some sort of incredible internal growth through this. And I was surprised. I thought I was an anomaly. Turns out I fit in the majority. I think the other is you just gain a perspective on eternity, on life, and you live with a greater purpose and drive. And I think I read that 1 out of 4 Americans say they know their purpose in life. 3 out of 4 cancer survivors answer that affirmatively. So there's a sharpening and clarity of why I'm here and what I do.
Wow. In your writing experiences, one of the things that if people look at your background, they start to realize is you ran a major publishing organization. And so here you are writing books, and some people might expect you to write books because, this is what you run for a living. But at the same time, was that intimidating to get into book writing, knowing all the great authors and books that you've been involved in?
Well, just to be clear, so InterVarsity is a large 110, $120 million organization. InterVarsity Press is about a $20 million part of it. So it's a subset. So I wasn't the publisher of InterVarsity Press. I was the president over it, but I was involved. But I wasn't. I want to give Bob Freiling, who was the publisher, credit is due. But yeah, it's a little intimidating when you're floating in circles with Eugene Peterson and Andy Crouch, who's been on your show, and other people like that who publish with InterVarsity Press. So I will say it's a wonderful crowd to run with.
Did it make it easier or harder that was one of the divisions of what you're doing and getting to work with your team on publishing a book?
Some people are born authors and they live to write. That's what I'm not that. I'm an activist. I'm a leader. I like to do things. So with the ethics book and the cancer book, I wrote it out of necessity. There was something inside of me that said I had to do this. I think with the cancer book, it was to make sense of the craziness of it. It was to redeem somehow, and I think it was to repurpose the pain. So the cancer book was kind of unique. I didn't think at age 60, what was I, 64, 65, I'd be writing another book. I thought I was a one and done sort of author and one hit wonder, if you will. And then the second book came out. I don't have a third book in mind. So
when people hear your story and you're going around the world and speaking and talking and doing things like this, you've become an inspiration to so many people. What do you hope the biggest takeaways are when people read the book and really are thinking about the bonus time in their life or how to get out of just a bad season? What do you hope those big takeaways are?
Well, first of all, let me say that some people don't get well. Some people die. Some people have chronic pain. And for them, I just feel a real sense of pain and loss and struggle. So I just want to acknowledge that group of people. And for those who are caregivers in life who have lost people, I'm really sad and sorry for that. But for those of us who survive and who aren't in chronic pain, there is this wonderfully weird, special period of life that is unlike any other. I mentioned sharpened focus. I mentioned there's this odd combination, Chris, of being at peace and at ease and slowing things down. But there's also this sense of intensity that you want to live life more purposefully and more directly. And so I know it's not going to last forever. I know my body will eventually catch up with me, not only with aging. I've got two lines. I got this aging line, which I'm getting older, but I also have the cancer line. the cancer's gone, but the effects of the cancer. So, you can either react two ways to that. Either as, oh, dread, oh, in 2 or 5 or 10 years, I'm going to be X. Or you can go, I've got 2 or 5 or 10 years I didn't think I had. So I think part of it is a sense of perspective. One of the pieces that surprised me a little bit was one of the early chapters is the Lord's presence on dark days. And I had assumed that when people go into these dark times, they feel abandoned, and some do, and some feel. I did not. I felt God's presence in a really unique and powerful way in my life. I mean, powerfully that so much that I thought it was only going to last for a short while, that it'd be a little grace. It is continued in a very special way ever since. So that has. So when I think about dying, I think about heaven. I look forward to it. I mean, I don't want to leave my grandchildren and my children and my wife. I don't want to, but I really look forward to life being extended beyond this. So that's a hope that I have.
Wow. On this podcast, we talk a lot about servant leadership, and obviously what you just shared about your outlook on life. How do you think servant leadership plays into how you lead now, maybe differently than how you led before?
I died. My ego. Well, I can't say my ego died. I still have but when you die, when you face your own mortality, you realize how kind of small you are, and yet you also realize how important you are to play the role that you're given. So I think it's made me more of a servant. So I was a type A executive leader who now mentors 20 people a month, and invests in their lives. Most of them are 30, 40, or 50 years old, younger than me, obviously. And I get great joy. I mean, absolute, amazing joy out of being a partner with them walking on their journey. So, if anything, I've shifted from this sort of primary alpha leader to this support person, and I'm stunned that I love it. I never thought that I'd be this pastoral. It wasn't. It was kind of there, but it was really underdeveloped, and now it's primary to what I do.
Obviously, we alluded to InterVarsity's publishing arm a little bit. InterVarsity did a lot more than that, as you alluded to as well, than just publishing. Talk about what it was like to lead such a massive organization that had influence all around the world.
So this is interesting. So I went from a university where I had 35 faculty and staff to a nonprofit with 1,000 staff that went up to 1,600 staff. I was 48 years old. I was way over my head. I made lots of mistakes. And it's amazing I survived the first 5 years because it was all on the job training. I hadn't been a vice president. I'd just been a dean. I mean, so it was a two-step jump. And we moved from Seattle to Madison, Wisconsin. It was the grace of God. My wife was the other component, I think, who just sort of made me sane and kept me going. I'd say the last half of that tenure was really fruitful and pretty wonderful. But I, my one piece of advice here is don't skip a level. I skipped a level, and I paid for it. The organization paid for it. We survived it. But yeah, InterVarsity largely does campus ministry. So we have chapters on, I don't know, 1,000 chapters. I don't know what the numbers are today on campuses around the United States. And these are usually staffed, sometimes with volunteers. And they work with college students to provide a place for Christian students, but also outreach to those who are seeking faith.
You talk about skipping a level and that being really difficult in causing some problems. How do you think people become a better servant leader throughout times of crisis and really prepare themselves for times of crisis and areas where they might not be equipped to lead in?
I don't think you prepare for crises. I think they find you, and they find us all because we live in this world that's not perfect. So I think it's how we react to crises. And we can react with dour, sort of negative, or put a fence around ourselves, or we can try to find gold in the manure. I wrote this in an article once that if you flush your wedding ring down the toilet, you go for it, even though there's stuff there that you don't want to do. So with senior leadership, when you have a crisis, you can bail, you can freeze, you can protect, or you can continue to walk out and getting shot at, and the world is so much more polarized now than it was 10 years ago. I really feel for nonprofit leaders right now. It's incredibly hard to do well. But if we can have a close circle of people who we trust, who hold us accountable and love us, we can move through these crises. And believe me, there's one crisis after another in senior leadership. I mean, it never really ends. And so I really admire people who walk that journey. I also know this, that if you faithfully walk through those crises and if you act well, you become a much better and well-developed human being.
Mm.
And I'd like to think that's what happened with me. Yeah, I think I'm a better human being now than I was before the crises. Even before the cancer, there were a series of crises that put scars, but also shaped and formed.
On the work front, are there any that stand out that you feel like, boy, that was just a really hard season, whether it be a mistake or just a hard leadership season that turned you into a better servant leader moving forward?
Yeah, without going into details, it was about 2005, which is now 20 years ago. It's hard to believe, but I still remember it really well. And things just blew up. And I did not handle the crisis particularly well, to say the least. I was inexperienced. And so the sad thing is there's collateral damage in terms of people's lives and other people who are, and so it's not really my story, it's other people. I would say for me, very humbling. My reputation was my idol up to that point, and my reputation got kind of shot. And I had to learn to be true to God's calling in my life, to express sadness and sorrow, and to talk and be vulnerable. And I think through that went on for a couple of years. It was a very long, hard journey. And I almost hate to talk about myself because, again, I'm more concerned about the other people who were hurt in this process. But I I learned. I licked my wounds. I kept walking towards what I considered to be the sun. I continued to try to do the right things, and I did become a better person. But I wouldn't recommend it. It's like cancer, right? I'm a better person for the cancer, but I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Right. I've heard from now multiple people who know you well personally and have worked with you over the years that
Oh,
you were
really? You
great
have a
at.
dossier on me?
Well, I've heard that they've said you're a great vision caster, but you set really clear and concrete goals. But one of the things that you did uniquely was cared for people well. And one of the things that maybe I wonder in that journey, and I'm just curious how people can balance the tension of like hard charging, big goals, God-sized visions with caring for people and actually lifting people up with them. How did you balance all that tension and deal with that?
Pretentiousness is a real sin, and I'm an Enneagram 3, if you know what that means, and I like to achieve and do things. And it's one of my besetting sins is accolades and applause. And when the clapping stopped, and I was viewed appropriately in many ways with skepticism, um, I I had to the plane had to be rebuilt in mid-flight, and I had to have a different set of rooting core identity. So I think it's interesting. You let me take a little bit of a tangent here, but I think this issue of identity is key. So as a senior leader, what for a lot of us start out with is that we're golden children. We achieve, we get applause. And when that doesn't happen, and our identity in that phase is all built around those achievements and the applause. But when those two things stop, when it's not going well in the business or the ministry, in my case, and you aren't getting the applause, you have to readjust your identity completely. So that's what happened to me over a period of years. My identity got rerouted in something much more solid than where I'd been.
Wow. For people listening, obviously our identity can get caught up in our work, in the things we're doing, in our families, and whatever. It could be really good things that our identities, yes, we're putting our identities into. How do you balance that, and what does that look like to not keep your identity in what you do, but in something else? And what is that something else?
Well, for me, it's my faith, and God is very good to me. I feel like I'm a child of God first and foremost, and that protects me more now. But I was a child of God before when I was when I was an achieving kind of accolade person. So I think it's back to the crisis conversation we had. Crises open our eyes. They strip away the blindness and they show us, oh, I had an appearance of control, that I really controlled things, or that I was really the X factor in making this happen. And when you get cancer, all of that's stripped away because you have no control, and you realize that you. And I think the arrogance that I've had my whole life of I control more than I do. Now, on the positive side, that makes me get things done. It moves the ball along. I'm an agent. I have agency. But on the negative side, I become a mini god. I'm a bit messianic in my own how I help people, and that has been stripped away largely. And I think and again, at age 72, I like where I am now, and I look back and kind of shudder at my arrogance and my innocence, um, my presumptuousness that I displayed most of my life.
So now you've transitioned into helping mentor so many other young leaders. How do you identify who to help in their next servant leadership journey? And then what are you actually walking them through and helping them with?
So in terms of the identification piece, I don't recruit. So I had a year of isolation, followed the bone marrow transplant, and I had 15 InterVarsity staff who, some of whom have still with me on a monthly call basis. And then other people have just drifted in. I teach at Regent College in Canada, for example. I have a number of former students there. I work with a foundation in Portland area called Murdoch Trust. I have a number of mentees who come through those programs. So I don't have a website. I don't recruit, and it's been ample in terms of, and I'm just surprised, and it's wonderful that people want to chat. I think what motivates a 45-year-old leader to want to talk to someone my age and stage is there's a loneliness in the job, which I resonate with. I spend a lot of time saying you're not crazy. What you're experiencing, how you're feeling is understandable. I think when people go through transitions or crises, they need someone to tell them they're okay. And so I do a lot of that. Transitions is a big word. It seems like most of my mentees over a period of 2 or 3 years are going through a major transition of one sort or another. So I'm kind of become a transition coach. I wouldn't call it, I didn't know that was a skill set, but it is. And walking people through and calming them down, um, looking at their options, praying with them. I do a lot of that.
I'd be curious, when you're working with these people, you probably see certain potential in them that they might or might not see in themselves. Are you seeing more potential in people, or are you often having to help people see their blind spots and really point out big areas of weaknesses as you're working with all these very capable and go-getter type leaders?
I'm a chronic optimist, and so I tend to be the former. I tend to see the upsides of people, and I'm not a major confronter. I mean, if they say something stupid, I'll point it out. But 90% of the time, it's mostly you're underestimating, you're undershooting, you're being too hard on yourself. Be patient, and so it's more encouragement. It's kind of analogous when I was dean of the business school. You had untenured faculty members, and they're all trying to get tenured. Well, we had a guy who was on the tenure committee, and we made him just being developmental. So he did not sit on the evaluation committee. So Ian was his name, and Ian just coached these people. They loved Ian. Well, at this age and stage of my life, I'm all development and no evaluation. And it is absolutely delightful. Oh golly! So I'm their best friend and their biggest supporter.
I know you're partnering with people one-on-one, but you're also doing a lot with universities still to this day, partnering and showing up and doing part-time stuff. With the stuff that you try to teach people, a lot of it I know revolves around leadership and ethics and things like that. From your journey, where do you see ethics play in terms of these tough circumstances people deal with, and then having to actually be a great servant leader and step beyond ethical issues that are very tempting or just things that they shouldn't have gotten into?
What's amazing to me is there are a lot of leaders who don't have an ethical grid. They have random verses or adages from Socrates or Jesus that they bring in, but they're kind of one-offs. And just a brief thing on my book. So the basic idea of the ethics book is that Christian ethics is based on the character of God, and God is holy, God is just, and God is loving. And so the book then for 300 pages goes on and applies those to various aspects of employee-employee relationships, the environment, and says, that we have to do things that have integrity, holiness. We have to do things that are just, and that justice is a very complex subject. And we have to do things that are loving. And it's not one of the three or two of the three. All three have to line up. When I wrote the book, I didn't realize that it would sort of set my own direction of how I deal with ethics. So whether it's a personal finance issue or whatever, I use those three lenses.
So, Alec, you've given so much good insight to our audience and shared a lot of your journey. I want to throw 10 rapid fire questions at you, where you just say the first thing that comes to mind for the last minute. Who's the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
Jimmy Carter, post-president.
5 words that most describe you.
Intense, charming, needy, pious, I hope. That's 4. Is that enough?
Yeah, that's good. Favorite book or movie?
Ordinary Grace is a novel that people can look up on Amazon. It's brilliantly written. Lovely book. Yeah, favorite movie is a good one. I'd have to think more about that.
Favorite food?
Thai food.
Favorite thing to do in your free time?
Oh, well, there's 2. Camping and going to a Seattle Mariner game.
Nice.
Which is painful. Camping's more enjoyable. Camping's more enjoyable.
Lately, for sure. Surprising fact about you.
Went to high school with Bill Gates.
Wow.
Paul Allen was in my class. There were only 60 guys. It was an all-male school. So that's a very unique fact of my life.
Wow. Favorite place you've been?
Ethiopia.
All right. Where's somewhere you want to go that you have not been?
Yeah, that is a great question. Probably Turkey. No, I've been to Turkey. What am I talking about? There are parts of Turkey I'd like to go to. I'll put it that way. Yeah, I've been to the capital, but well, anyway, I'd like to see more of the country.
Best advice you've ever received?
Oh, well, that's a quick answer, isn't it? Don't be a train that runs over people. Be a train that carries people.
Wow, that's good. Well, thank you, Alec, for being willing to share some of your journey and your wisdom and insights with our audience. And I'm just really thankful for you.
Well, Chris, thank you. And it's good to reconnect after, at least a decade when we saw each other before, whatever, how many years it's been. So,
thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.